it is time where we have reserved for Joe Kent with Grassroots Institute of Hawaii. And it's a pleasure to be reconnected. And Joe, thanks so very much. Good to see you.
Good morning. Great to be back.
How you been?
Oh, pretty good. Pretty good. Things are going good at Grassroots Institute. And of course, we're always trying to research more about how to make Hawaii a better place. And you can get our research at grassrootsinstitute.org. You can sign up for our newsletter there. We've got 45,000 now people subscribe to our email list. And, who knows, maybe next year we'll have 10,000 more and 10,000 more. And eventually we'll take over the whole state.
And there we go. The strategy has been announced.
Yeah.
And here we go. What is, before we jump into topicality, and there's plenty of it, what is the, I would guess the attraction? Because that's quite a bit. That's quite a healthy number.
Yeah.
What is the composition of folks who join you?
Oh, it crosses all political and socioeconomic lines. Basically, we've got people who are interested in the cost of living in Hawaii. And, why does milk cost $8 a gallon? Why are eggs $5?
$6.
And why are our energy prices 3 times the mainland and housing prices and so on? People are asking questions about why is it so expensive here? And they're coming to our research to find out. But they also want to know about government corruption and scandals and any malfeasance, and how can we build a better, more accountable government for the people? So, so we're kind of the fourth estate, similar to Civil Beat or Star Advertiser. Nonprofits do this now. It looks like nonprofits are picking up the mantle for helping to educate the public. So, yeah.
What is the role of social media and how it plays with the messaging that you deliver?
Well, social media can be toxic, definitely, when it comes to education. So I think it's important to inject some truth into that sphere as well. Of course, right now we've got a social media system that just feeds you information that you may not have been even looking for. And so we're trying to do that and make good, educational, truthful pieces go viral too, so that we can at least counteract some of the narratives here.
So let's jump in, because you mentioned, and I'm not assigning this to the city and county of Honolulu at this point. However, the city auditor has gone through COVID, spending, and more. And this is an area of great concern for many. Tell us why that is, Joe, and your take on this story.
Well, yeah, that was an amazing piece by the city auditor. And Chad Blair talked about this earlier, but basically, there was $387 million of CARES Act funds that were appropriated at the federal level in 2020 to Hawaii and to Honolulu. And where did the money go? Keep in mind, this is in addition to the PPP money. You remember that, the Paycheck Protection Program.
Yeah.
So the rule was that if you're a business and you take PPP funds, you're not supposed to take the small business relief funds as well. Those are 2 pots of money. But the audit found that many businesses did take both. So how did they take both monies? Well, there wasn't much oversight over that fund. And so businesses applying were kind of sailing through the process, even though they didn't quite meet the eligibility requirements. That's what the audit said. Now, on the other hand, there was another fund that was supposed to help households, the Household Relief Fund. And on that side, the city managers were a little too strict with the rules, and such that many people who applied didn't even, they gave up because it was just so difficult to apply. And there were $9 million that were unspent there. So, rightful questions about how the money was spent, and it looks like it wasn't spent exactly well.
Yeah. And what should the general public draw from this report? And is it a final definition, or will there be further examination, possibly even legal?
Well, I think there should definitely be further examination, especially with the PPP monies, because that was even more funds, if I'm not mistaken. But, the moral of the story is you have to follow the money, especially when there's a huge surge of funds given to the government to dole out. We have to watch that closely. And there definitely should be another audit, at least on the PPP side.
Would an independent audit carry more weight?
Oh, absolutely. And now that we're kind of in a similar situation, by the way, because we have another disaster that we're faced with, which is the Lahaina disaster. And there are tons, billions of dollars of funds that are getting doled out. But where is the money going? That's a harder question to answer because some of the money is in private sector foundations and funds. And of course, so that's not state run, but there are a lot of state run funds that are being talked about. And so we have to follow the money just the same. Unfortunately, as is the case with all these things, you only find out after the money's already been spent.
Right. Yeah, but that's also, we talked briefly with Chad, is the $150 million announcement by the governor. And could you expand on that with more specifics, please?
Yeah, so basically the governor announced recently the creation of a $150 million Lahaina Victim Compensation Fund. And that would be contributed to by the state of Hawaii, Maui County, Kamehameha Schools, and Hawaiian Electric. I think the main purpose of this fund is to dodge lawsuits because those entities don't want to have to pay billions of dollars when they could just pay millions instead. I mean, remember in California, the PG&E, the Camp Wildfires there, they paid out around $13 billion to, thousands of victims. And in Lahaina, which some would argue is an even worse disaster because more people died, we're talking about $150 million. So, that $150 million, if it were divided by the amount of people who passed away, would be around a million or 1.5 million per victim. There are a few victims who were severely injured who would also be eligible for the fund. But if they take the money, then they have to say that they're not going to sue the state or those entities. And so it's a little, it's an interesting question about if you happen to be a victim, a family member of someone who may have passed away, should you take the $1 million now, or should you wait and go through a long lawsuit where you may eventually be able to get much more money? So that's a question that everyone's going to have to answer for themselves. But
there was a lot of criticism at the outset from real estate speculators and others trying to bargain and offer, hey, we'll give you X amount for this, undercutting what the true valuation is.
Yeah.
Isn't this the same thing?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, we've all seen those ads. I see them like on my Facebook feed. Were you a victim? And click here. And you're not really sure if this is a good thing to click on. There's all these different lawyers basically descending upon Hawaii to try to sue the state. And who knows if these are all going to be congealed together to form one class action lawsuit or something. But the victim fund won't necessarily make all those lawsuits go away. Those lawsuits, many of them have to do with people who lost property. And the victim fund doesn't say anything about property. It only says about your life or if you were severely injured. So many of those lawsuits will continue to march forward, I would assume, because there is property liability here at question too. So,
but the commingling of state, which is public, HECO, Maui County, that's part of this funding, that's a strange alliance to a certain degree. I would imagine that Governor Josh is justifying this to stave off perhaps those ambulance chasing litigators, lawyers, to minimize that so people don't have to endure. But then again, the commingling of these entities. I don't know.
Yeah,
Joe.
and someone at the press conference yesterday asked the governor if if this fund is some sort of an admitting of fault by those entities, and the governor basically said, no, it's not about that. It's just about helping people recover and so on. But this is, I think, really about trying to dodge lawsuits. I don't know exactly if it will work, though. Like I said, the lawsuits are going to march forward one way or another.
Wow. Can we talk about the state's ability to fund in emergencies, rainy day or whatever the terminology is? Are we going to look at a depletion of those funds? And if so, aren't we exposed that, God, please don't, if we have another cataclysmic event?
Well, look at the Emergency Budget Reserve Fund, which is basically an emergency fund, and it has around $1 billion or $1.5 billion sitting in it. You've got the Hurricane Relief Fund, which has around $187 million in it. So there are monies in pots at the state coffers, and I'm not sure if those funds are going to be used for this Lahaina Victims Fund, but you can just predict that those funds will be depleted through recovery efforts after this disaster. And let's say, for example, that the Hurricane Relief Fund is used. Well, then what if we're hit by a hurricane, right? Then those funds are gone, right? So, but on the other hand, those funds are put in place to help deal with emergencies. They're unexpected black swan events like this. So yes, but even if those funds are depleted, it still may mean more pressure on taxpayers to refill those funds. And there are rising costs in other areas too. We've got rising energy bills because of the Hawaiian Electric Company is trying to invest more in updating its infrastructure to mitigate against future wildfire risks and so on. You've got rising insurance costs as well. I mean, insurance companies are just realizing that they underestimated the risk of wildfires in Lahaina severely. And now they're going to adjust the rates to across the state, not just in Lahaina, in wildfire-prone areas. So rates will definitely go up, and that means costs are going to go up for Hawaii residents who have to pay for all this ultimately, one way or another.
Yeah. We're talking with Joe Kent, Grassroots Institute of Hawaii, our regular weekly visit, and thankfully Joe is with us. Green fee. Now, a green fee to me means that's what you pay to play 18 holes of golf. However, there's a green fee. Can you remind us and expand, please?
Well, this is the governor's answer to all those rising costs I mentioned. How are we going to pay for this? How are we going to pay for that? Well, let's just implement a green fee, he says. And so the green fee would work like this. A tourist comes to Hawaii. They go through the airport like normal. No one hits them up for a fee at the airport because that's apparently unconstitutional. But when they get to their hotel, perhaps, then the hotel levies a $50 fee on each person who's not a resident. Or let's say they go to a beach or to, Akaka Falls on the Big Island or someplace. Then they'll also be charged a fee. Not also, but basically they would be given a license. So when they come to Hawaii, you pay $50 to get a license to visit all of those sites, basically, across Hawaii. $50, that's a lot of money, especially the way, imagine you're a tourist and you go to the beach and someone says, sorry, I know you have brought all your gear here, but you have to pay $50 per person in your group to lay on the beach. That would leave a bad taste, I think, in a lot of tourists' mouths who maybe it would blow up on Instagram. I don't know. Mm-hmm. And then maybe people would be not so willing to come to Hawaii anymore. Now, the $360 million that the fund or this idea purports to garner yes, it would pay for all of these things, but at what cost? Would we see suddenly a decline in our tourism market, which could lead to lower revenues overall? I mean, see, the way that government types calculate taxes is they view us all as robots who would just do the same thing no matter what changes in the tax code. But actually, we live our lives around the tax code. And so if the tax goes up, people change their decisions. And you might have a situation where increasing taxes could lead to lower revenues. So I'm not sure that the green fee actually works.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, it's the most competitive industry, tourism. And we're already a pricey place. And it will just lead to, you're absolutely right. Families and individuals, they do a compare and contrast, fitting their budget. We price ourselves out, and then everything else diminishes.
Well, and let's not forget, we already have users. If I go to Akaka Falls, they already try to hit me up for $3. Like today, we already have that. And so locals don't have to pay it, but imagine hiking that by $50. So that's substantial.
How do we connect with you and Grassroot?
Find more of our research at grassrootinstitute.org and sign up for our newsletter. Or if you don't want to do any of that and you have Instagram, go to Grassroot Hawaii.
And I'll tell you what, I can't thank you enough and your team. And I appreciate all that you do for us, not only here on the program, but throughout the community, Joe.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you.
We're going to be back in a moment.